And I heard a bark, and it didn't sound like a normal bark. We stopped our bikes, and I said, John, something's wrong. It needs help. And it was way far away. We had to go down the paved road and then back on a dirt road to get to the wastewater treatment plant, and then go down by the fence. Somebody evidently had thrown a puppy over that 8 foot tall fence with barbed wire over it.
The Local Insider Show is brought to you in part by My Patriot Supply. You don't need to live in the heart of a hurricane zone or along an active fault line to be serious about emergency preparedness. If we've learned anything from both historical and recent events, crises can come in all shapes and sizes, and they can come at any time, even overnight. Whether you're experiencing the effects of long-term illness, an accident, job loss, or even widespread threats like terrorist attacks, economic collapse, or an outbreak of disease, you can tackle what's next in confidence with My Patriot Supply storable foods. No matter what your emergency may look like, you won't have to worry about where you're getting your next meal. And as far as your survival is concerned, there's nothing more important than that. Already our foods and packaging undergo regular, rigorous testing to ensure they exceed industry standards for safety, quality, and shelf life. Ready Hour also conducts regular analytical, microbial, and oxygen level inspections, as well as sensory testing of raw materials and finished goods in a food testing lab. Don't delay, prepare today. When an emergency is on the way, My Patriot Supply receives a rush of orders that slows their ability to ship as quickly as usual from their warehouses across the country. Go to localinsidershow.com/emergency food to order your 2-week or 4-week supply of storable food.
Are you in Logan County, Arkansas, and need computer service or repair? Look no further than Coal Creek Media. We're the area's one-stop shop for all your technology needs. From laptop and desktop repair to software installations, we've got you covered. We also provide virus and malware removal services, so you can rest assured that your computer is secure. With over 20 years of experience in residential and enterprise technology service and support, we make sure to use the latest tools in the industry so that you get the best results and the best service possible. We know that technology can be confusing and intimidating, so we make sure to take the time to explain what we're doing and why. We aim to ensure you understand everything we do so that you can make the best decisions for your computer. Plus, we can provide on-site services so you can get help without having to leave your home. Whether you need a one-time repair or ongoing tech support, our team ensures you get the best service possible. So if you're looking for reliable help with all of your technology needs, Coal Creek Media is the perfect choice.
Welcome to the Local Insider Podcast, a show about everyday people who make a big difference.
My next guest was born in Virginia and can trace her ancestry all the way back to the Jamestown colony. She later moved to the state of Idaho, where she helped organize the first Tea Party of Idaho. She is a lifelong learner, teacher, and animal welfare advocate. Please welcome to the show, the diehard patriot, Andy Elliott. Welcome to the show, Andy.
Thank you very much.
For my first question is, what's your story? How is it that you came to live in our area?
Well, do you want the real long version or the shorter version?
Whichever you want to tell.
Well, I'm a Southerner by birth and grew up, around animals all my life, worked a few animal welfare cases. When my daughter graduated from Virginia Tech, we packed up 17 rescue animals and headed west. Didn't even know where we were going to go live.
Mm-hmm.
And we made it to Idaho. Then 9/11 happened shortly after that. Anyhow, we headed towards Idaho Falls. John John got a job offer from the Idaho National Lab. So he's an aerospace engineer out there, where we've been for 20 years. And I have rescued and been involved in politics. Helped organize the first Tea Party in Idaho back in 2009. And that kind of catapulted me to fame in eastern Idaho. So I got, called to do a lot of things politically wise. My father was involved in politics. He ran for the House of Delegates back in Virginia. So, it wasn't a foreign entity to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so we spent the 20 years in Idaho. Tried to burn down the house accidentally by trying to kill a dandelion right by the house. Ended up living in our insulated and heated shop for 9 months while they were rebuilding our house. And then the Idaho National Lab mandated the vaccine. And they gave John a waiver for a little bit, but that didn't last long. And when they said, okay, you got to have it or you can't come back on the site is what the Idaho National Lab was called.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, okay, that's it. It's our time to go. And so he had worked there a little over 20 years, so he took early retirement. Housing prices were at like an all-time high. For a lark, I put our home, we lived way out in the middle of nowhere. We had like an oasis in the middle of the Snake River Valley desert.
Oh, wow.
And there I had all my animals, etc. So let's see. So kind of as a lark, I put the house on the internet one Friday night. And it was crazy. For the next week, it was absolutely crazy. I had people all over the country trying to buy that house from us. From California to Minnesota to Mexico to just everywhere. And they had some sad stories that they just desperately needed to get out of where they were.
Mm-hmm.
And wasn't selling to Californians. Made up my mind about that. So they were already trying to take over Idaho. So at any rate, within the week, we had, an offer. And the funny thing about it was I just picked a price out of the blue, just an absurd price. Nobody even questioned it.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what we said. So we thought, well, it must be our time to go. So how did we get to Arkansas? Okay, I'm a Southerner. I wanted to get back to the South after 20 years in the cold North. John wanted to be west of the Mississippi. We wanted a deep red state. And here we are.
You say you're a Southerner. Were you born in Virginia?
Yeah, Newport News, Virginia. Yeah, where unfortunately they just had that school shooting.
Mm.
That little 6-year-old.
That's crazy.
It is. Yeah, it is.
I've heard a lot of stories of children accidentally bringing guns to school. It happened whenever I was in school. Of course, not at our school, but
yeah.
You heard stories about it because they would mistake it for a toy gun. But now there's no mistaking what a real gun is.
No, and Newport News. I mean, all my family was there, but I was glad to leave because it had become a place where it wasn't safe. Mm-hmm. This was in 2001 when we left, and we lived in a nice neighborhood, and you could see drug deals taking place out in the streets, and it was not good.
How did you meet your husband?
Through the Civil Air Patrol. My son was in the Civil Air Patrol, and then we moved, et cetera, and that was it for him. But my daughter wanted to get into the Civil Air Patrol. And so it's the official auxiliary of the United States Air Force. And they do 80% of the missions for downed and missing aircraft on the continental United States. So Brooke wanted to join, so she joined as a 9th grader. Of course, she was a girl,
mm-hmm.
like the only girl for most of the activities. So Mom had to be at all the activities. So we both jumped in, and for the next 4 years, we did CAP up to the hilt, and it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. I mean, it gives your kids discipline. It gives them goals to reach. My daughter, if I may brag, you can cut this out. My daughter, in those 4 years, she worked her way up from, of course, the lowest rank,
mm-hmm.
Into the cadet colonel for the Wing of Virginia. She's a Spots cadet, which is quite an honor to have achieved that goal.
Mm-hmm.
She won all kinds of awards and all. I was the public affairs officer for the state of Virginia. Brooke got to travel to Germany and Israel through the Civil Air Patrol. She trained with the Air Force PJs, the Army Rangers. We just did everything for those 4 years.
Wow.
And she was the first woman admitted to the Virginia Military Institute, though she turned that down for another offer. So
that's amazing.
both my kids had appointments to the Service Academy. So, yeah, it was a fun life.
You mentioned that you helped organize the first Tea Party in Idaho.
Yeah.
That was back in 2009.
Tuesday, April 15th, 2009, right down there on the Snake River. Yeah,
Wow.
in the center of Idaho Falls.
I remember that was in the height of the Tea Party.
Yes, it was.
And I remember 2008, that was when Ron Paul had his run for presidency.
Good memory.
And that's when the internet was really coming on board for political campaigns. And he had so many young people that were backing him. And all the old guard just, thought it was a new fad or whatever, didn't know about it, was ignorant to it or whatever. And anyway, I don't know where I'm going with this, but just the Tea Party movement really, it was able to grow at such a rate because of the use of the internet.
Oh, yeah.
And it, for whatever reason, it took the establishment 10 years to realize that they had to put some overseers or
time and effort towards the party.
Yeah, and an apparatus in place to be able to control the internet the way they did.
Oh, okay.
The traditional media.
Yeah, I see where you're going with that. Yeah,
and that's what we're seeing now, and you're seeing the repercussions of it with, Elon coming out and showing like everything that's going on behind the scenes. So.
Absolutely, we were aware that we had been told or warned that the Secret Service was watching the Tea Parties, and they were at all the Tea Party events.
Mm-hmm.
Were taking, basically taking names. But the Tea Party is alive and well. I am the major poster still on all the Idaho Tea Party pages, and here in the Arkansas Tea Party pages. We Tea Party Patriots is. Sent out information the other day about working with the new speaker, Kevin McCarthy.
Mm-hmm.
So they're alive and well.
So what's your opinion on the whole Kevin McCarthy situation that just went down this last week?
Well, I wish it had been somebody out of the Freedom Caucus,
Yeah.
But evidently he made some major concessions. President Trump was behind him. I'm a big Trump supporter. Sometimes when I'm doubting what President Trump says or does, I have learned that down the road he's usually right,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'll go with that. But I just hope the Freedom Caucus does hold Kevin's feet to the fire. If they do that, I think we'll be okay.
Mm-hmm.
He's promised the first bill he brings forth will be to cut the funding for those 87,000 armed IRS agents. My daddy was an IRS agent. I got stories there.
Oh yeah, I bet. What makes you smile when you get up in the morning? What do you love to do?
Oh, first thing I do, I get up, throw on some clothes, and I walk out with my dogs. And I mean, it's so beautiful here in Idaho. We'd have months of nothing but gray and snow, and you didn't see your yard for like ever. And I am just so glad to be here and see the sunshine and
Mm-hmm.
just God's all over the place here.
Mm-hmm. So, had you ever been to Arkansas before you moved here?
Yeah, and I lived in Memphis for a little bit, and gosh, I've lived in 9 states. I'd been back and forth, from Texas, etc. But I never realized that western Arkansas was this beautiful. I mean, it's stunningly beautiful. I can't wait for my Idaho and Arizona friends to come and see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tell everyone that we live in paradise. That my friends that I grew up with here,
Uh-huh.
a lot of people take it for granted how beautiful it is here. Because you can't see the forest for the trees, pun intended.
Right.
But when you go, like my wife, like I said before, she's from Texas. We'll go spend a week in Texas or whatever, and even like her grandmother lives close to Killeen, and there's some trees down there. It's not like West Texas where it's just complete desert.
Yeah.
Even that, it's not just the trees; it's the mountains and it's everything. When I come home, it's like. I always say if I ever lose sight of Mount Magazine, I start getting vertigo, you know. So I like to stay here.
That's what they used to say of some of the high school kids in Idaho. They're never going to leave the site of the school that they graduated from. But when we moved out to the Snake River Valley, I bought the house because of the trees.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was just, there's nothing but desert out there. Just, BLM land, potatoes. It's just flat in the middle of the Snake River Valley with, mountains. We lived inside of the Wyoming Tetons, the Montana Beaverheads, and the Idaho Limhighs.
Hmm.
And it was a gorgeous setting. But it was dry. When we first got to Idaho Falls, there was, I would call it a small river. And people said, that's the Snake River. And I kept saying, no, that can't be the Snake River, the mighty snake, the lifeblood of Idaho. But it was. I mean, I could throw a ball across it in places. And so I'm glad to see a real river. I grew up on the James River, 5 miles wide.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
So the Snake River, is that the same Snake River that runs through Washington?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The mighty snake.
Okay. Tell me more about the Civil Air Patrol. I've never heard of that. Is that part of the military, or is it National Guard? Or
it is the official auxiliary of the United States Air Force, and they provide all of our funding.
Mm-hmm.
Before I left Virginia, I was a captain, and my husband still is active in Civil Air Patrol here. He's a lieutenant colonel now. It's an all-volunteer organization.
So do you enlist in it, or are you like on the hook for 4 years? Or
No. It's totally voluntary.
Oh, okay.
And some of us just devote our. I mean, gosh, I've got people that are 50-year members. I've got friends that are 50-year members. It's that important.
Wow.
But it's just the experiences are great. And one of the churches, my Wednesday night church, there's some people that moved here from Oregon, and we just happened to talk. And she mentioned her daughter, was interested in flying. Well, my husband's a private pilot,
mm-hmm.
and so I started telling them all about the Civil Air Patrol. Well, they have jumped in, all feet. Both their daughters, the moms are there with them and all. And it's just a great volunteer organization. But you're really doing a lot. I mean, shoot, I would teach all day and then be up all night searching for a missing aircraft or a boat or something like that.
Wow.
So there's a lot of experiences and a lot of knowledge and a lot of courses that you can take.
So do they use civilian aircraft, or do they use military aircraft at all?
They use their own aircraft.
Okay.
Of course, it's paid for by the Air Force. They've got some great planes, beautiful planes. 182s, 210s, or 206, 210, something like that. They've got some really nice aircraft. My daughter was able to solo through one of the Civil Air Patrol programs. And if you work the cadet works their way up through they have uniforms and all, and competitions with other squadrons. My daughter, what was I going to say? Worked her way up to, as I told you before, to be a cadet colonel.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when she went into the Army Reserve, she went in at a higher rank. And, so there are a lot of perks there.
Wow.
And there's a big network. Civil Air Patrol is a good organization. Can't say enough about it.
I didn't even realize we had that here.
John goes to the squadron up in Russellville simply
okay.
because there are a lot more pilots, and pilots like to hang around, talk pilot things.
Mm-hmm.
But they've got a good cadet squadron in Fort Smith at the airport there, and they fly the cadets. They provide opportunities. They provide free pilot training for the cadets. Aerospace education. It's just great.
In your past, do I understand it correctly that you were a teacher at one point?
Yeah. I taught for, high school, 17 years. I've taught college. That's what I did.
Any specific subject that you're more interested in or liked teaching more than others?
Well, as one assistant principal told me one time, I was always the last teacher to get an assignment because I kept going to school, so I got certified in so many things. I loved teaching chemistry and biology the most.
Mm-hmm.
I liked history. I liked teaching the history. I would teach sociology and government at the college level. And I don't know, I just enjoyed teaching until it got to the point where they didn't let you teach anymore. I said, okay, that's enough. Bye.
So they didn't let you teach anymore?
Well, there's so many restrictions on it, and when a principal comes to you and says, "Will you pass this kid because he's a football player?" and you say no, I've only seen him twice the whole semester in my class, and then they go behind you and pass him anyhow, that's not doing the kid any good. And so I just figured it was time for me to go.
What are some of the things that you've seen in our community that you didn't have in Idaho, or some of the advantages of living here?
Oh, my gosh. Well, of course, we've already talked about the beauty of the area. I mean, Idaho is beautiful with all the mountains. I mean, we're talking real mountains, 14,000 feet.
Yeah.
Not Mount Magazine.
Right.
But we bought the place out in the Snake River Valley because it was it had all these trees on it. I had over 40 trees on our 4 or 5 acres.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, we had to irrigate 9 hours a day.
Really?
Oh, my gosh, yeah. I mean, in Idaho, we got 10 inches of precipitation a year, and most of that was from snowpack. I mean, some years it wouldn't rain but a drop.
Really?
Yeah. We're huge potato and grain growers out there, and it's all from the aquifer. And the aquifer level has dropped dramatically to the point that they're, on good water years, that they're recharging the aquifer. We get all of our, agricultural water, all of our commercial water, it's a residential water from the snowpack. And if we don't have snow, if we don't have an adequate amount of snow, then we're hurting it, and they cut off the water for the farmers. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the farmers had a short water season this past summer, if I remember correctly.
That is so foreign to me.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a whole different world. And not a week went by in the 20 years that I lived out there that people didn't make fun of my accent. And I would say, "What accent?" But here, the rain. Oh, it's just like the Virginia range when I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
I love the rains here. I mean, inches at a time.
Right.
I didn't realize how much I missed it. The trees. I mean, again, we bought our place in Idaho because of all the trees. We bought this place because of all the trees on the property. And
so you guys have a place out in the country here?
We live right outside the city limits. We tried to downsize. We just have a couple acres now where I can have my dogs and all my plants, my trees and all.
Mm-hmm.
And and I love being so close to town because everywhere in Idaho, we would drive like an hour and a half to work.
Good grief.
We were 35 miles from Idaho Falls, so anything you wanted, because we didn't even have a gas station in my little town of Hamer. It's about 100 people. And it was just all, farmland. You had cattle, horses, sheep, potatoes, and lots of alfalfa.
So what did the livestock eat if there was no rain to grow the grass?
Well, the BLM land. That was so critical to for the farmers, the ranchers, to have the BLM land.
So what is BLM land?
Oh, Bureau of Land Management.
Okay.
Not Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the whole Bundy Ranch thing was BLM.
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah.
Is it land that you lease from the government or land that you...
Land that you're able to graze on, and I don't know if they have like allotments. I'm not quite sure how the details work, but I do know one thing. Every spring, when the government said they would trail those thousands and thousands of cattle and sheep right past our property to go out to the BLM lands, or they would put them in those big semis and truck them out to places. Sheep herders all over the place, those little covered wagons, and they would take those covered wagons out in the middle of nowhere so the sheep could graze. And those men would spend months and months and months out there all by themselves. The rancher, everybody would have a cell phone. The ranchers would call and ask what groceries they needed, and he'd deliver them. They'd have to haul water out to the stock because there weren't no watering holes.
No wells or ponds or anything like. Well, if you've only got a couple inches of rain a year, there's really no pond.
No. They would have to haul it out. If they're up in the mountains, of course, the mountains would have some streams and all. But we have used so much water that what used to be the watering holes for the pronghorn, which y'all would call antelope, had dried up. So they had to they had to start pumping water out of the ground for the wildlife.
Really?
Oh, yeah. They have those big 4-inch pipes that go down to the aquifer, and they're pumping 24/7. The crops out there, they're having to water all those fields. They have the big pivots that go round and round, and then they have the hand lines and the wheel lines, and yeah.
So, do you think it's a change in the is it climate change that's causing this, or is it?
Okay, I'm a science major.
Mm-hmm.
The climate is always changing.
Right.
We have wet years, we have dry years.
But I mean, you understand what I'm asking? I'm not saying is it anthropogenic global warming causing it? I'm not saying that. I'm saying is it? The Sahara used to be green and lush.
Yeah, the desertification of the Sahara. Yeah,
right. So is it that the weather patterns are changing and the rain is shifted somewhere else, and that's?
I'm sure. Climate does change over the eons and all. But if you think about the impact of humans, we're draining those aquifers, we're draining the streams. What's the river that goes through down to Southern California?
Colorado?
That river.
Is it Colorado River that does that?
It could be. I don't know. I'm drawing a blank right now. But it no longer reaches there because it dries up. In China, they're having huge rivers. The Wangho dries up.
Mm-hmm.
We've got 9 billion people on this planet now.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of people.
So, do you ascribe to the thought that we're overpopulating?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I, as a science major, water is not being created. There's a finite amount of water, and every time, every person that's added to the population, makes that piece of pie smaller. Resources are finite, so you take it from there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a green advocate.
Right. See, so is it possible that maybe so let's say you take the section of, I know I'm getting off in the weeds here. So you take a section of the population of the people that are in Idaho and you move them to some place that has abundant rain like we do here. We have generational, what are they called? Artesian wells, where people have lived on a homestead and they've never ever had, they had 12 kids in their family. They've never had a well run dry. And still to this day it hasn't. So if you take those people and move them all here, would that cause the same thing that's going on in Idaho, or is it a shift in weather pattern?
I don't have enough knowledge to say that. I don't know. I will tell you one thing that I personally observed when we first moved to Idaho. Oh, man, did we have snow.
Mm-hmm.
Over the tops of the cars. You'd ride down the highways, and the snow would be like a solid fence on the sides of the roads. And when we left 20 years later, we didn't get as much snow.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, it's beautiful, too. So I don't know. That's all I can say is what I experienced there.
Mm-hmm. So what absolutely excites you right now?
The fact that looks like our country may have a chance to turn around, because I think we are headed down a very destructive path.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to do everything I can to try to take back my country. Is that an appropriate term?
Yeah.
It's just, I have fought all my life just to try to maintain, support for the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
Just follow the Constitution. How hard is that? But the kids nowadays, and what I observe firsthand in school, they are not being taught this. They're being taught a bunch of stuff that is a political agenda. And our kids are and I taught AP kids. My AP chemistry kids, I'd mentioned Williamsburg or Jamestown to them. I think maybe we were taught something about that. But they don't have a concept of the importance of the history of our country.
Mm-hmm.
And without that foundation, these kids don't see any reason in fighting for our Constitution, what made this country the greatest country in the world.
Yeah, that's scary.
It's very frightening. It's and I've gone through some of the textbooks, not here in Arkansas, but the kids are only getting partial truths,
mm-hmm.
if anything like that. There's definitely an agenda out there. And another thing, too, that kind of works in here, and I'm sure that everybody's aware of it, but perhaps it's, something you don't say out loud. But the discrimination against men is very real, white men. And I know I was working on my third master's at the University of Idaho, and I began looking through the programs. And do let me know when I'm getting way off on a rabbit trail, by the way.
I don't know.
When I was looking through all the programs, I began seeing all these programs dedicated to women. And I'm thinking, and scholarships, just tons of scholarships explicitly for women. And I said, that's not right. And so I began doing a little exploring and a little research, and I contacted the University of Idaho, and I said, I've got some concerns here. I'm a student. I've been looking through, the catalog, the materials offered, and et cetera. And I said, something's not right here. Well, they totally blew me off, and they wouldn't even respond to me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that made me mad. So, okay, here we go. I have a cause. So through the wonderful internet, I hooked up with this guy from Turkey who was a PhD student over here at UCLA, Berkeley. Yeah, UC Berkeley. And he had been fighting a long time as an advocate for equality for men, for men's rights. And so we filed a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights up in Seattle, I think it is, up in Washington State, against the University of Idaho for its discrimination against men. Well, these things take years, but the University of Idaho had to change its policies and be more inclusive of men, provide equal opportunities. I mean, even right now, they have not just University of Idaho, but there are programs out there that they go to the schools to recruit to, what are they called? STEM. The
STEM field.
Yeah, STEM fields for the girls, exclusive of the boys. I don't guess they're men quite yet. That's not right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had a son and a daughter.
Right.
Anyhow, they're having to be more inclusive now. They had summer programs, all kinds of summer camps for the girls, but not the guys. So we've changed that. We've been working on a few other institutions now, and in fact, they've contacted the OCR about the University of Arkansas, because if you go on their website, you'll find the same thing. So many programs for the women. And if you look numerically speaking, there are more women that are graduating with degrees, than men now.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no discrimination against women any longer. It's
right.
time to equalize things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my 2 cents there.
So do you think this is a concerted effort, like the Yuri Bezmenov interview with Yuri Bezmenov back in the 80s with G. Edward Griffin? He was a defected KGB agent to the U.S. It was an interview that an author, G. Edward Griffith, had with him, and he said he kind of laid out how the socialist MO, basically like Reagan said, it only ever takes one generation to.
Oh yeah,
and that's what the Soviet plan was you take one generation to demoralize a country. And that's what they do, is they demoralize the country, and then they come in with political correctness, and then they fragment get people infighting, classes against each other. Just
take us over without firing a shot.
Right.
Yeah.
But it seems like there is a concerted effort, a blueprint, whatever, because the same policies were implemented in all these different countries. If you look at the World Economic Forum,
oh yeah,
what they're doing now.
Are you familiar with the Confucius Institutes?
Mm-mm.
Okay, the Confucius Institutes are departments within our universities across the country, funded by China.
Oh, I heard about that.
Okay, yeah. And so, that's for those purposes. They want to keep an eye on their Chinese students while making China and their way of government, appealing to American students. And quite frankly, our kids, they don't have the background to withstand, they don't have the knowledge. I was told you don't need to have the children, the children, my kids, my teenagers, memorize chemical symbols. Well, yeah, you do. How are you going to balance formulas and things like that? Well, they don't need to memorize things. Well, yes, they do need to memorize things. They need a body of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And without that, they can't ward off things like this information being presented to them, but, propaganda is what I call it.
Right.
And it's deliberately done. I saw it in school. I mean, when you see white boys walking down the hall from an assembly saying, how come we don't have assemblies, about us? Why is it always about minorities or other countries and all? What's wrong with our history?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a sad state.
Our history, meaning the U.S. history.
Yeah, the U.S. Oh, in the last school board meeting I attended before I left Idaho, I was talking with one of the principals, and it was kind of a forum meeting, and I said, our kids need to have more U.S. history taught to them. These kids don't know it. I've taught the advanced placement kids. They don't know their history. And he said, well, the state requires two quarters. Yeah, or two trimesters. And I said, okay. And he said, we do that. And I said, do we always have to meet the minimum requirements? And his response was, well, that's a good thought. No, we should be doing more. Our kids are lacking. We're too busy. If you listen to the Russian, the spy that we just let go for that.
The arms dealer?
Yeah. He was over there on Russian TV, and I listened to his interview, and he says, I can't believe in the schools in the United States, they're teaching their kids there are 72 genders. He said they're destroying their country.
Mm-hmm.
He's right.
How do we make a difference locally? What are some things we can do to ward off propaganda, socialism, the destruction of our history?
Well, parents need to get involved. I've taught in some rural schools where they didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, yet my science kids scored in the top half, the state science kids. We don't need a lot of money. We need parental involvement, and I've always taken it right back to the parents.
Mm-hmm.
They have got to be involved in our kids' education, which I think is a wonderful, positive, unintended consequence of COVID, because a lot of parents have, found out what their kids are being indoctrinated with. But I go to the school board meetings, and I know I rub them the wrong way. I don't have any kids in the school, but darn, I'm a taxpayer, and I want this country to succeed, and I want to, I want to ask questions.
You're talking about the school board meetings here?
Here,
mm-hmm.
Yeah, here. And I something I wish they would do, because it really is a deterrent to parents being involved, is you can't say a word in a school board meeting. Okay, they've got business to attend to. But like Mayor Wilkins does at the end of the city council meetings, he opens it up for public questions.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to get a question to a school board member, you have to go back home, write it down a certain amount of time before, then it's got to go out, and then they let you know if you're approved to ask the question, and then you have to go back to the next school board meeting to have the question addressed.
So is it that you have to submit what your question is, or that you would like a certain amount of time?
No, you submit the question so they can, prepare. Yeah. So I think that's a real deterrent. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I have never been to one of those meetings, and I've probably been to a handful now. I try to go every month. And I'm the only, unless there was an awards ceremony, which they had at the last, they had the chess players and some things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But, I'm the only person there most of the time, unless I'm being paid by the school system.
I see. So do you sub or anything with the school? Are you involved with the school system here?
Well, I applied to be a sub,
mm-hmm.
but that went awry.
Hmm.
And I don't think that this would be a good forum to discuss this.
Okay. Okay, I will respect that.
My husband did sub 3 days. And
so my wife was discussing something about a program that she had when she grew up in Lubbock. They had a program for children called Come Fly With Me.
She mentioned that, yeah.
And she said that she would really like to see that here, that it had a really positive impact on her, that she looked forward to it every summer. Is that something that you and your husband may be open to?
Well, to tell you the truth, that we just had I don't know what they call it, but they fly students. I think they did it at Boonville Airport, and I know they do it up at Russellville. But John, he flies students and cadets, all the time. That would be great. Lindsay needs to hook up with the airport manager.
Okay.
And talk to them about it, and maybe the city council. But I think Civil Air Patrol would be really, because that would be like a pipeline for new cadets for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I understand that you previously were in the animal advocacy.
My whole life.
What is that? What would you call it?
Animal welfare advocate.
Yeah, animal welfare.
Not animal rights.
Right.
Don't cut that out. Yeah, I have, how some kids become great piano players.
Mm-hmm.
Well, animals have been my life since I was, a little kid. I first started rescuing when I was in elementary school, thanks to my parents' support.
Mm-hmm.
My first cruelty case, I can still tell you every detail of that, was when I was 17. And that kind of set my life's course. And everywhere I have lived, like I said, I've lived in 9 states now. That has been my main focus, is animal welfare.
Mm-hmm. So what's the difference between animal rights and animal welfare?
Well, I don't believe animals have rights.
Right.
But I do believe it's a person's responsibility to care for them. And it's law enforcement's responsibility to enforce the codes they have,
mm-hmm.
which I wish they would do here. But
you mean like leash laws and things like that?
No, taking care of the animal. An animal chained to a barrel that is smashed and they can't get into and stands for days out in the rain, and we have rain here a ton, that is not right.
Right.
Something needs to be done.
What
else shall I say? But no, I've been involved in animal welfare cases everywhere I go. I've had 2 that went national out in Idaho, and really irritated the sheriff. But I always try to go to law enforcement first. I always try to go up the chain of command, if they don't know about it, they can't do anything about it.
Right.
But, when a mother dog is laying out beside the road, having been hit by a car for 3 days, nursing puppies with 2 broken legs.
Oh, my goodness.
And the sheriff says, well, there's nothing to be done. No, I know how to read the Idaho law. And, that went all over the country.
Hmm.
So, it's some archaic attitudes.
So how long have you lived in Boonville now? In the Boonville area?
11 months in a couple of days. Yep, been here 11 months. Love the weather.
Mm-hmm.
Love the fact that I can see my yard here in January.
So what is your opinion of the people here?
I love them. Friendly. I mean, we can't ride down Highway 10. We live off Highway 10. So we truck our bikes into Boonville every day, and we ride all through Southtown. And, there's some nice homes there and some homes that should have been plowed under decades ago.
Yeah, we have a new mayor that's one of his main goals.
Priorities. Yeah. Well, I have heard that. I just, John and I are amazed that it's been, this didn't happen overnight.
Right.
And we've become friends with some of the people along our route. We know the dogs that chase us. We know their names. Some of them we take back to the fence and put them back in the fence, for the people. But people have invited us in their homes. I am just thrilled to be back in the South when people talk like I do. I really am.
So is that something that's missing from people up north, like in Idaho? They're not really friendly with each other?
Well, we lived in a Mormon community, and we're Lutherans, and they were just wonderfully accepting of us.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've heard complaints, for all the time we lived here about how cliquish they can be, but they were wonderful to us. And you know what? I've just about decided people are going to be as friendly to you as you are to them.
Mm-hmm.
And we just went in and just became part of the community. And, the Mormons are good people. They're very family oriented.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they don't have the same beliefs that I do, but, we became very close to some of them.
Right. And that's kind of what, going back to our values as a country, that's kind of what we were founded on. We're accepting. It doesn't matter who with the exception of the enemy, we should all be united against that one. But,
yeah. And the Mormons taught me a lot. They taught me a lot about food preparedness and all.
Mm-hmm.
They're really big into that. I learned a lot, which I've been able to pass on to my family in Virginia and now to folks here, too, about being prepared. And we may have to use it soon.
Yeah. So what are some tips that people in this area would give for preparedness? And what type, what would facilitate the need for this? What do you see in the future?
Facilitate the need for this. Well, I think, as you're probably aware of course, everybody's aware of inflation and how that's impacted everything. From the research I do, which I do every day, it's going to be a lot worse. 2023, I think, is just going to be devastating to the Americans. One of the unintended consequences that I'm kind of hoping for as we go through these really tough times, that the younger generations now will kind of wake up and realize that this country is a good country and needs to be supported and not torn down all the time. And that I hope the families, but this is an economically depressed area.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that there's a lot that people can do individually. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, how can you get prepared very well?
Mm-hmm.
You can buy an extra, bag of beans and rice and things like that when you can. I always tell people, make sure you have plenty of pet food on hand. Walmart didn't have any of my cat food today. I have 6 months supply, but they didn't have any today, So that worries me. I have 21 cats, 21 rescued cats.
Wow, 21 cats.
I have rescued all my life. Like I said, when we moved to Idaho, we brought 17 rescues with us. Dogs, cats, ferrets, and guinea pigs. And when we moved to Arkansas, I drove straight through 28 hours from Idaho to get my animals here and get them settled. And we moved here with 27.
Wow. So how do you keep with that many cats, how do you keep them from just reproducing? And are they all spayed and neutered? Okay.
Oh, always. I mean, I even would spay and neuter my neighbors' animals. If they were on my property, they would be gone for a day or so. But yeah, everything we had. Oh no, never. No puppies, no kittens, nothing.
Yeah.
Too many out there.
Yeah, it sounds your philosophy with animals sounds a lot like my wife's family. My wife's grandmother she just very much despises paying for an animal. She said there's so many animals that need homes.
Oh yeah.
She's like, why would you ever pay for an animal? And I can see that.
Yeah.
Some people like to know what they get too. If they need a certain breed or if they want a hunting animal or whatever. But
well, there's a rescue for every breed.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want a dachshund, then you go to the dachshund rescue. If you want a collie, you go to the collie rescue. They're out there, and it's really sad.
Mm-hmm.
I have prevented 4 rescues here, or 4 abandoned animals or surrendered animals here from going to the pound, because the pound is nice for a short stay.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very impressed with the pound that this size of the community even had one.
Mm-hmm.
And the animal control officer does a good job of keeping them clean and keeping them fed. But a life in a concrete cage is not a life. And some of those dogs have been there for, 2 years now.
Mm.
And, so people need to adopt. And you can, if you can find any breed, anything you want. I know, from puppies to old dogs. I always kept the the hard to place, the biters, the ones that needed help, that had health problems, the ones that had really had a hard life. We would always keep those till the end of their life.
So do you see a change in those animals to where they were really aggressive when you first got them to where?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's just absolutely. It does my heart good when I go out there and I watch this. In July, we were out riding way out yonder by the wastewater treatment plant, and I know where all the dogs are in Boonville. I'm always attuned to things like that. And I heard a bark, and it didn't sound like a normal bark. We stopped our bikes, and I said, John, something's wrong. It needs help. And it was way far away. We had to go down the paved road and then back on a dirt road to get to the wastewater treatment plant, and then go down by the fence. Somebody evidently had thrown a puppy over that 6-8 foot tall fence with barbed wire over it. We couldn't get in there because it was all locked up. It was on a Saturday. It was triple-digit temperatures, and the puppy was in distress. I mean, I could finally see it. So we called the police department. They sent an officer out, and he finally got the code, and we were able to go in there and got the puppy. But it was, about 8-9 weeks old, emaciated, hundreds of fleas. I've never seen a dog have so many fleas. Every kind of parasite imaginable, ringworm. It was in terrible shape. Well, 5 months later, Skipper weighs 60 pounds. And he's out there running with my boxer mix, and it just makes my heart just burst just with joy just to see how what a change. But it's really distressing to ride through town and look at all the chained dogs. And some of them are chained to almost nothing.
Yeah. So what are your plans for the future?
Well, I always think about going back to graduate school because for some reason I enjoy taking courses. I haven't figured that one out yet because I hated school when I was going to school.
Yeah.
But college was different. And I think about that. But I also do a lot of, food prepper things like we bought pears and apples today to can. I want to put a lot more fruit trees in on our property. I want to get every variety of fig that I possibly can. I already have 7 varieties. I always am looking out to try to help animals. In Idaho, I was not a big supporter of food banks because people would go around from food bank to food bank and then they would sell the food or, give it to their families or things like that. So I refused to support the food banks. We did a lot of donations for spay and neuter for animals. But here, I have learned the food banks are critical. So John and I do a lot of donations to the food bank. So that's kind of a pet project of mine. I don't know. Life just seems to be really busy. Yeah. I don't have too much downtime here.
Just keep on keeping on. That's the plan.
Yeah. And I'm learning more and more about our community and, the ways it works and looking forward to, meeting the new mayor and seeing how things go there. So life's exciting so far, still at my age.
Oh, yeah. So what's the most important thing that we should know about you?
That I'm a lifelong animal welfare advocate and I'm a diehard patriot. That would sum me up.
Yeah, very well.
Yep. My ancestor was the first governor of Virginia.
Really?
Oh, yeah. He was the one that saved the Jamestown colony because after the winter of starvation, they had gotten back on the ship and were headed out of the Chesapeake Bay. And Lord Delaware, my ancestor, he was on the ship coming into the bay, and he persuaded them to turn around and try to reestablish the colony. And the critical thing that he did when they first got to Jamestown, and our family Bible's in the Jamestown Museum, by the way, but when they first got to Jamestown, they had the common storehouse. You work, you put everything in there, some people take from it. Well, that's the first thing he did away with.
I read that story.
You have your property, and that's a powerful thing.
Right. That was one of the first instances of where we started implementing the idea of private property.
An individual annuity, yeah. Right. You don't work, you don't eat.
Right.
And that's one thing about the Mormons. They would help people even if you weren't Mormon, but they expected that you would come and help them clean the building or, whatnot. you know, if you're going to eat, you're going to work, unless, you know, you've got a health issue or something.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Well, Andy, I appreciate you coming on. It's been a blast.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I enjoy talking, as you can tell.
As do I.
Thank you.
Thank you.